Well, hello and welcome to Restore Live on a Monday evening, a show that goes out to Northern Ireland on a Monday, and we go out live to the rest of the UK on a Wednesday evening. And if there's anyone from any of the platforms that's here from England, Scotland, or Wales, well, you're welcome. You're welcome to stay, and you're welcome to watch and leave some comments. And I noticed that the numbers has went up there very well, so I'd like to ask you, whenever we bring on our guests, if you can pop some questions on the live chat, and we'll try to get you some answers to the questions. Mervyn Gibson, the leader of the Orange Order, he's on with us this evening, and we're here to really try to scratch the surface to. Right now, at the minute, I mean, you've often heard it before that people would have said that unionism is at a crossroads. Well, you see, I believe that we really are at a crossroads right now. And that crossroads, we entered onto it at the start of the year, on the 1st of January this year, when there was a deal done. Boris and his team, they done a deal with the European Union, and it seems to be that Northern Ireland didn't get the same deal as the rest of the United Kingdom. But however, we are where we are, and it's about really finding out and finding ways of how it is that we're going to bring unionism together. We're going to bring the diverse family of unionism together in order that we can stick together, in order that we can fight for our survival in a meaningful, proactive way, and in a way that defends, protects, and enhances Northern Ireland unionism. Now's not the time for fighting. Now's the time for coming together, sticking together, and ensuring that we do the right thing. Just a few weeks ago, I spoke to Councillor Billy Hutchison from the PUP, and it was a very good stream that we had. And there was some open and honest dialogue that went on, and I have to say that I came out of the back of that interview, as did many people that had spoken to me after it, and we come out with a different frame of mind, let's just say. So I'm hoping that this evening, after talking to Mervyn, we can do exactly the same thing. We can get a lot out of what's about to happen here, and that we can go on and we can stick together, and we can really ask Mervyn what it is that the Orange Order can do, what it is that Mervyn can use his influence right across the unionist family to do. And again, I would encourage the people on the screen, on the live chat, to pop up the questions and try to make them sensible questions, try to make them answerable questions. And I'm sure Mervyn will answer the questions to the best of his ability. So I'm just going to play a little video, as we normally do at the start of the show. And this video is, I mean, I've taken it from something that we done with Professor John Tong last Monday. And this was a question that I asked John Tong, and I asked John Tong this question specifically for a reason. You see, I believe that whenever that you enter into a referendum, and if the question is the same for everyone, well, then no one at the end of that referendum should be treated any differently. And here we have England, Scotland, and in Wales being treated differently from Northern Ireland. And this question that I was asking John Tong, the professor of politics from the University of Liverpool last week, was, is it ever acceptable that this would be the case, that we have three constituent parts being treated differently from one constituent part? And in my book, that's discrimination. That is outright discrimination. Yet seemingly we haven't heard calls in any way, shape or form from any of our unionist leaders, any of our unionist politicians to really form the basis of a discrimination case, because that's what it is. Or is there another way forward? Look, that's what we have Mervyn on the screen for this evening. And look, I'd like to thank Mervyn even before I bring him on here, because we just had to ask, and no problem, he offered to come on. So that's a big thing, and that's a very good thing. And as I say to the people on the live chat, please ask, just think about what you've got to ask, and pop up the questions, and we'll try to get you some answers. So we're going to play this little video from last week from myself and John Tong, and whenever the video goes over, well, Mervyn will be on your screen, and we'll welcome him to Restore Northern Ireland Live, Restore which is part of the Restore GBNI project. And as I say, on the back of this video, you'll have Mervyn on your screen. So here goes with the video. And let's look at this concept of democracy, and whenever that you would place your axe on a ballot paper, and I'll just pop the particular ballot paper up here for people to see. And the commentary I would give here is that it was a referendum for the entire United Kingdom, as you can see. I mean, if I place my axe here in the Leave the European Union, and 17.4 plus million other people also done exactly the same, and we won the referendum, so to speak, is it ever right? Now, this is a very serious question, and I'd like you to answer this really, carefully for me. But is it ever acceptable from an academic's point of view, from a professor of politics point of view, that democracy would be split up in the way that it was split up, and having, say, for example, there's 4 constituent parts, 3 constituent parts are treated differently than 1 constituent part? Why is that ever acceptable, John?
It's a great question, John, and it's a difficult one. It's a complex one to answer, because I get the premise of your question, and in many ways, I know where you're going with it, and I agree to a considerable extent. You asked remain or leave. It didn't say one part of the UK will leave on different terms to the rest of the UK, and that's where I think that the Loyalists protested, and the DUP and UUP are correct in posing departure on different terms from the rest of the UK. We also live in a world of pragmatism. So you can argue that the EU played that border for all it was worth, the north-south border. And I would have, again, some sympathy with that argument. But we knew that was coming. I would agree that the signs are not good early on. There's been shortages in supermarkets. There's been, firms unaware of what they've got to do. And if you're a Great Britain, investing in Great Britain, why would you be particularly interested in trading in Northern Ireland, given you've got this extra paperwork to complete? So I understand the annoyance of unionists.
Mervyn, welcome to Restore Northern Ireland Live. And look, again, I'd like to thank you for coming on. And just like the other people that we've asked, whether that be Billy Hutchison or even John Tongue there last week, I mean, the people that we're asking, they're facilitating, which is very, very good. And, if we can't have a conversation about where it is that we go next with our leaders, whether that be in the Orange Order, whether that be within unionism, within the DUP, the UUP, and any other political party which represents people. If we can't ask the hard questions, I mean, what is politics if that is not permitted to happen? Mervyn, I'd like to start by asking you a question on the that little video there that popped up. And, I mean, I believe from the bottom of my heart, and I'm a pretty logical fella, and whenever I put my axe in a box the same way as people in England, Scotland, and Wales, I mean, I don't expect in a democracy to be treated any different. What's your views on that, Mervyn?
First of all, John, let me say thank you for your warm welcome. Just one quick correction: I'm not the leader of the institution. I don't think any one person would take that responsibility or all that blame, shall we say. But I am one of the leaders. I'll accept that. And from your introduction, there's no pressure in the build-up. We hope everybody goes away better informed. I hope we all go away better understanding each other. Would be my wish from this evening on all these types of shows. But in regard to your specific question about Brexit, no, I voted to leave. I voted to leave as a United Kingdom, not as part of that United Kingdom. We were told all along we would leave as one United Kingdom, and sadly that's not the case. We were betrayed in this. So this situation is certainly not acceptable. To put your axe in the ballot to say the United Kingdom will leave, but then it didn't say what way we would leave. You could argue all those sort of things. There wasn't finer details there. And some are now claiming they knew exactly what was going to happen. I can't see how that's the case, that they knew we were definitely going to be betrayed, shall we say. I'm on record as calling Boris Johnson a lousy unionist. I think it's to be seen if he's a great Prime Minister in the mode of Thatcher or maybe Winston Churchill, although both of these, I also said in the same article, were lousy unionists as well. So in that way, we as unionists have been let down. And it's interesting that right from the very start, they give the 4 nations what way they voted as nations. But if you go back to the Good Friday Agreement, We're told that those figures will never be released, how people voted. And I'm a Democrat, I accepted that decision. But it would be interesting to see how unionist parts of Northern Ireland voted, how different constituencies voted for or didn't vote, as the case may be, for the Good Friday Agreement. So it's not good to release those figures, but in this case, they immediately went to the Four Nations vote. But no, it wasn't acceptable that's happened, but sadly it has happened.
Yeah, and I guess the question that follows on from that, does the Orange Order take a position on where to next? I mean, what do we do to try to, I guess, minimise what has just happened?
Let me say from the start that the Orange Order is a very, very broad church. We have all shades of political opinions in it. We've all reformed denominations in it. So there'll be people who will want to do their utmost on the streets, and there'll be other people who think we've made the mistake already, it's too late. There'll be others who want to play the game and see where it goes. So we're a broad church, so it's hard for me to say what will happen or what the Orange Order do, because our members will do different things according to their own conscience. But personally speaking, I have to say, I believe that it has happened. I heard John Tongue use the phrase pragmatic. It's not a phrase I'm overly keen about, because pragmatism usually means somebody's being betrayed or somebody's being let down. But I don't see a situation whereby it may be done by legal terms to overturn it. The vote, you could try that, but I think we've wasted hundreds of thousands of those sort of challenges over the years. The first option that jumps to the unionist minds is protest. But let me say clearly, these are different days from 10 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, and 100 years ago. You have to cut your cloth accordingly as to what the community will do. There's no good lamenting that we won't get 500,000 to sign a covenant, which I don't believe we would nowadays. There's no good lamenting we can't bring the province to a halt through a strike, which we did in 1974, because I don't believe that would happen today. People have changed, societies changed, etc. And the same way as in the flag protest, I remember speaking to those in the flag protest, which I totally agreed that the flag shouldn't have come down. I was totally opposed to it. But very few took to the streets. Yet in all, there was 60,000 people in East Belfast sitting watching Coronation Street saying it was wrong, but there was only a few hundred out in the street protesting against it. So that showed for me that the days of on-street protests, by and large, are over. The one notable exception was the homecoming parade. I thought unionism was never united as before, as people headed to the City Hall, streamed from all parts of the province to the City Hall, from all shades of unionism and from all spheres of society. That united us, something like that united us. But I don't think we're in that position again. So I don't think doing street protests where there's a potential of getting young people criminal records, or even older people or women or whoever records for blocking streets, I don't think it would work. I'll be honest, I'll be straight. If I thought we could do it by protest and change things, I'd be the first on the street, because I supported the Workers' Council strike, I've supported issues over Drumcree and others where street protest action was taken. But sadly, I don't think it would work at this particular time. That doesn't mean, and this is the key to it, I think, that doesn't mean people agree with the decision. But we live just in a different world. The young people wouldn't be the same for coming out. People are tired, shall we say, and feel let down in many ways by parts of unionism. So that's not the same enthusiasm. But that's not to say we accept things. That's not to say we just lay back and say this has happened. I think we need to fight it in whatever way we can, and that's where we need political leadership to show us how to deal with things, to show us what's the way to make sure these protocols don't get any worse. Indeed, we need to amend them. And I think we need to play a more strategic game, because I believe this decision will orientate our economics towards Dublin and towards the Republic and towards Europe. And we have to get ways to counterbalance that. And we have to go to the British government, those who have let us down on this occasion, and say, how do we counterbalance that? Because I think it was wrong what Boris did, but I suspect he did it for pragmatic reasons. As you said, the border became a very litmus test for the whole thing. We were talking about it, the President of America was talking about it, European heads of all the states were talking about it. The Republic of Ireland government brought in violence to it when Varadkar showed that picture of the border pole being burned out. Unions certainly didn't threaten violence around it, but those things were introduced. So I think we need to now go and see how we can strengthen and negate those things that have happened, because we're not going to overturn them. If they're going to overturn them, somebody tells me how to do that. Everybody will I want them overturned, but how do we achieve that? It's no good just wanting and wishing for something. It's not going to happen. We have to work out a way to do that. And I think that unionism needs to do that collectively with all the various parties and everyone else and work out a strategy. But then it leads to what I think is one of your other major themes is leadership. You know, people need to want to be led. Sadly, today's society's changed. There were leaders 100 years ago and people followed them because they trusted their leaders. That's what they did. But nowadays, everybody's a leader. Don't think it's probably correct to say, but nobody wants to be an Indian. Everybody wants to be a chief. And I think that's the case. And social media has helped that. I'm not saying people shouldn't have their opinions and all, but everybody believes they know better than someone else. And sometimes we need to step back and say, we need led. We need to follow someone who we believe is going to overturn that decision, who we believe is going to work with others to overturn that decision. And I think that's the key, that we have to want to be led as well.
Yeah. We spoke to Billy Hutchinson just a couple of weeks ago, and Billy Hutchinson, he's on record over the previous months, and he's calling for some kind of unionist convention. Now, if you listen to his words, they were talking about perhaps having it people-led as opposed to politician-led, but the politicians being present and really trying to work out a way forward in which really that you can have buy-in too, and you can have it where people will, if they feel that they're part of it. Mervyn, I think was the process that he wanted to sort of try to engineer, that if the people feel that they're part of it, well, they're most likely to stick with it, put their hands to the plough, so to speak. I mean, do you see that ever happening today in January 2021, say, where we could get our leaders together, where we could literally try to work out a way of going around the country and trying to sort of gain some support, and in a way that what we do is that we spell out to people that here's the options. This is what we have to do, and I'm a great believer in reaching out into the other community. And, I've said that a million times. And sometimes whenever people hear that, they get a wee bit frightened. But, I would be talking about reaching out into the nationalist community, into the Catholic community. And there's people just across those divides, which, they're the same as us. They just want to live their lives. They don't want the hassle. They don't want another 30 years of troubles or anything else, and yet and they wouldn't agree with, say, Sinn Féin. So that's where that's my standpoint. I want to reach out to those people. I want to reach out to people in the south to see that if there ever was a border poll, can we get some support down there, that those people would maybe, who knows, stay on our side, vote against it. Do you ever see the circumstances happening when we can get our leaders together and we can work out a strategy that would be capable of reaching out to those that are disenfranchised right now and bringing them back into the fold?
I think there's about 6 questions in there, John, all good ones, I have to say. All of the cruxes matter. Let me deal with your initial one, is the old chestnut of unionist unity and one party and all that. I have worked for 20 years with many others to try and see unionist unity at a ground level, at a political level. I've been involved in forums, I've organised conferences, and indeed I would say that one of the main strengths of the institution is it's a broad church, and at least that brings people together, but that's not the answer to this particular situation. Do I think we need to do it or can do it? I think we've no choice, but we have to do it. But I don't think, I've changed my opinion over the years, I don't think we'll ever get one unionist party. And indeed, I think we have a strength in having several unionist parties. And there's never been one unionist party either, because there was always unionist Labour, unionist Liberal. There was various shades of unionism, shall we say, out there. And we see that today with major parties, with the DUP, UUP, and then the minor ones, the TUV, the PUP. Everybody's got their different opinion. I think it was Nelson McCausland, I'm giving him the credit for this, I think several years, wrote an article where he talked about the republicanism. And republicanism was viewed as a movement rather than one party. So you could be in the SDLP and sing a rebel song. You were as much in the struggle for United Ireland as the man with the gun, from their point of view. And I'm using that in the Republican scenario. I think a unionist movement is an umbrella group for everybody to buy into aspects. We're going to disagree. For instance, you mentioned the Orange and the Brexit. We didn't take a view in Brexit as an institution, because we had members who voted to remain and members who voted to stay. We don't take a position with regard to the transfer test, because we have people who support it and don't. But equally, when it comes to the matter of the union, and how the important union is to us and how we want to maintain it. I think we all speak with one voice. We all want to see that achieved. The difficulty is probably we don't speak with one voice, I should say, is everybody wants to go about a different way in achieving that. But I think we need to come to some understanding, particularly amongst the political parties, who, as far as I see, and I'm blaming them all in this without exception, is they tend to turn back out of each other because there's maybe elections come up. They want their party to look good, and they all play politics, and you can't blame them. They're politicians. People want jobs out of this. People want to be elected out of this. So they'll push their particular agenda. And I have no issue with that. I have no issue when they differ on whether they're sort of conservative in their economics or Labour in their economics or whatever way. But where I have a difficulty, if we're facing a major threat to the union, and anything such as Brexit, I have to say, is a threat to the union. I don't say it as a major threat, but it is a threat to the union. I think we should try to speak more with one voice in how we tackle that, and there needs to be some coming together. I think there needs to be a coming together at the ground level that you talked about, John, getting people power. I know you're keen on that, and I think that's important. But we also need at the political level to get people together, because it's always easy for those who aren't in power to promise things and say what they would do. And I'm speaking all around here, I'm not getting in any particular unionist party, because it worked the other way when the other party was in power and they were outside. And it's more difficult when you're in power to deliver things. It's more difficult. You have to be more astute in how you go about things, and you might be able to deliver everything that you promised. Yes, the quick solution is don't promise so much, and then you'll be able to deliver what you can promise. That's the way to go. But in respect of the union, I think there should be a movement to maintain the union and strengthen the union. It's not only about maintaining the union anymore. This we will maintain. It's about moving beyond that and strengthening the union. And getting into another part of your question was reaching out into other groups. I said, I think at least 2 years ago, that again, getting back to my mantra, we're not in the same place as we were 100 years ago. It can't be just you're unionist, that's it, you're unionist, we have got the majority, we'll rule no matter what type of thing. And sadly, there was a bit of that attitude. I don't believe as much as nationalists believe there was, but there was. But now we need unionists of all shades of opinion. We need unionists who differ theologically from me. We need unions who differ socially from me. We need unionists from all spheres of life, shall we say. And we need to allow them space to be unionist as they see it. It might be the way I see unionism, might be the lifestyle I adopt, but if they're unionists, we need them for the future to maintain the union. And also we need to convince soft nationalists, because the biggest practical argument, and I'm not a practical unionist, I'm a unionist by conviction, by birth, by heart, and all that, but there will be people out there who will be unionists because it's the best solution economically, and indeed that happened 100 years ago. The traders and the merchants and the businessmen voted for it because it was economic sense to stay in the United Kingdom. I still think that's maintained, but we need to prove that. We need to enhance that. We need to share that with people and say, do you really want to go to the Republic and pay what they're paying for their medicines and all? So there'll be soft nationalists will vote for the union too if it came to that. But I think it's just about strengthening the union because it's the right thing to do, not for any other reason. And I, like you, I believe in reaching into the other communities. I believe in going and talking to others and trying to make common ground. It's not always easy. Some of the things they say put us off, but I think there are things, and I think we made this mistake when dealing with the Republic of Ireland over the years. I think there have been people down there who probably, some people, not them all, but some who detested the IRA as much as we did, and we didn't make common cause with them. We treated them all as ultra-Republicans and supporting violence, and there was elements of that. The government and the Republic did birth the IRA in many ways. But since then, there have been pockets, I believe, in all the political parties outside Sinn Féin who we could have made common ground with for certain things. I think we still need to do that. And we still need to look at what parties in Northern Ireland we can do that. I think it's much harder. I think the parties have changed in Northern Ireland. The SDLP's moved, shall we say, greener than anything else. The Alliance is just difficult to deal with. They want to be all things to all people. But I do think we should try. And the other thing, which you didn't say, and this is one that I often get attacked for on Twitter and everything else, I think we need to confront Republicans. Sometimes I think we don't confront them and we give them a free stage and we give them a free rein. I had no difficulty going to West Belfast and standing on the platform. It didn't make me any less a Protestant, less an Orange man, or less a unionist, stand there and tell them what I believed. I wasn't there to compromise. I was there to help them understand my position. and where I stood to show that I wasn't for rolling over, and I've no interest in Ireland. And I repeat that, and I have no difficulty doing that with regard to the Republicans. Now, the institution at the minute has a stand that we don't engage with Sinn Féin or invite them to our headquarters, simply because that's where we are memorialised to our murdered brethren, and it would be horrendous to bring someone who was involved in those murders or supported those murders to building to do that. But I have in the past, and if I was free in the future to do so, I have no difficulty in confronting Sinn Féin, because many people lost their lives confronting Sinn Féin, the Unionist Committee. Many people confronted them, thankfully, and survived. So if I didn't fear them in a terrorist campaign, I'm not going to fear them now in the political stage. And I think we need to confront them at every opportunity we can and expose them for what they are. People who support terrorism, people who have supported the murder of their neighbours, people who have supported or murdered their own people as well. And we need to be continually exposing that and putting our position forward.
Yeah, you just mentioned there about the victims within the Orange Order that was killed over the Troubles, Mervyn. Yeah. And from my recollection, there was somewhere between 300 and 400 people, I think, that belonged to the Orange Order. Could you tell us a wee bit about that, please?
Sure. It's 339 is roughly, and that sounds terrible to say roughly, but it's sadly there's people coming forward every year who were in the order and were killed. We hadn't known about it for some reason, or the family maybe hadn't wanted it broadcast at the time, or for whatever reason. So around about 339. The vast majority of those are members of security forces, or else ex-members of security forces, those who served in the RUC Reserve, UDR, RIR, prison service, or worked at even the building capacity, and were seen as legitimate targets. Others were simply murdered because they were Protestants along the border. Murder in the eldest son, so as the farm couldn't go down the line. There was that type of murder. There were some murdered by loyalist terrorism as well within that. At least one prisoner I know was murdered by loyalist terrorists. And we had some people who were members of paramilitary organisations. Not a big lot, but there were members, and they were killed as well when they were still members of the institution. But the overwhelming majority were members of the security forces. Indeed, when the Troubles came about, the Orange Order appealed for members to join the security forces to fight the IRA, and the vast majority of our members did that. And as a result, we suffered these high numbers, because if you look at it, that's 1 in 10 of everybody killed in the Troubles was a member of the institution. Yeah. 1 in 10. And if you split that down to many Protestants were killed, which I don't think we need to, but if you did, it would show the percentage of the Protestant population who were in the institution and who were murdered. And that doesn't make any less sacrifice of a Roman Catholic in the Ulster Defence Regiment, or someone who didn't align themselves with the order, even from the Protestant community. Their deaths were equally abhorrent. All we're saying, what we represent, is those 339 as victims of violence.
Yeah. Mervyn, I mean, you're a man with experience. Over the course of the Troubles, is there any particular atrocity that would stick out in your mind as a heinous crime, as a horrible crime?
This is going to be a cliche. To me, they're all heinous to the family. It sounds they're all heinous to the families involved. You know, you can look at some horrific murders of how they were carried out with knives and stuff on both sides. You can look at some of the tortures, how UDR men were taken across the border, tortured, and then 2 or 3 days later, their bodies strapped a 500-pound bomb to try and kill more people. Then you had the Tullyfallen massacres. You had the other massacres that we've been commemorating and thinking about recently with the 18 soldiers at Warren Point or Narrow Water. All those atrocities for families, every one of them was a heinous crime. There is not one excuse for any of those murders. I think we need to remember that sometimes we do major on the big offence and we commemorate them, but I was involved in an event this last 4 years over the World War I here in East Belfast called Rowan Row, where people planted crosses to remember, and we opened it to anybody. Yes, it was mainly aimed at World War I, but if you had a granny died last week, you want to write her name on a cross that could be placed. There was usually about 2,000 to 3,000 crosses placed there. But I remember being introduced to a lady one day who her husband had been she was from here and she'd been married, something like, the facts might be totally like us, but we're not far away. She was married something like 6 weeks, and her husband was a paratrooper, and he was murdered in Cross McGlen. And she had never been at an event where his name appeared in some, and she could actually lay a poppy cross in memory of him. And that was just one tragic case. So to me, individual cases, sounds, as I say, it sounds cliche, but for every one of those people who were murdered, there's a family distraught and left behind, and we need to highlight them all. Not just, and we see that with the Republican narrative, there has to be an inquest into this, there has to be an inquest into that, and that was a massacre, and that was a human rights lawyer, and this and that, and all that. Every murder was wrong, and they all need to be treated exactly the same. And there's no hierarchy of victims, particularly when it comes to Republican violence. And equally, I don't think those who were out trying to murder or involved in murder deserve the same status as innocent victims. And by innocent victims, I include the security forces in that as well.
Yeah. Mervyn, I recently talked to Professor John Brewer, who's attached to the George Mitchell Institute for Global Peace. And, we were talking about victims, and it came on the back of, we had discussed there, we had a live show here where what we did is we highlighted what happened in the Enniskillen bomb. And then we done one on the Shankill bomb in around the time, in and around their anniversaries there, just passed. And just a few weeks later, I spoke to John Brewer, and we were talking about victims when he had said to me that there's two types of victims. And he mentioned that there's victims that want to forget, and there's victims that will never forget. I added another part to that equation where I'd says, well, there's victims that want to forget, and they're not being permitted to forget because, say, Republicans continue to agitate against them. And look, I'd like to just pop something up on our screen here for a few seconds, and then I'll ask you, because I know that you're a friend of Sammy Heenan's, and anyone that looks at what happened to Sammy Heenan when he was a young man or when he was a young lad, I remember first hearing Sammy's story, and it brought tears to my eye. So it did. And this little picture that I'm about to pop up here is where the sitting MP, Chris Hazard in Castlewellan, where he's named his office after two IRA terrorists. Now, I'm pointing this one out specifically for a particular purpose here, is that Sammy Heenan lives not too far away from there. And just for the people on the live chat who doesn't know Sammy Heenan, well, Sammy Heenan was orphaned at the age of 11 by Republican terrorists when he went out into the yard of his farm and found his dad lying in a pool of blood. And, what 11-year-old should ever have to go through something like that? And, why I'm talking about this case right now is that to add insult to injury, that these people, okay, they're not only, they're not putting it on a monument somewhere, tucked in out of the road, but they're blatantly naming their MP's office after these two terrorists, Megorian and something else. We'll pop the picture up and we'll read from it, and everyone can see it. Just 2 seconds here. Here we go. So it's the McNulty and the Megorian Advice Centre. Now, one of the things that sort of sticks out to me here is that, that's an MP's office. And, wasn't there a controversy not too long ago when weren't saying that you had to make your MP's office or your political party's office, you had to make that open and inviting and capable of attracting members from right across the community, because that's who you're meant to be representing. Mervyn, have you any thoughts on that?
It's wrong, I have to say. It's very simple. It's glorifying terrorism, and that's what it is in everybody's face. We had the same incident in the same council area, the McCreesh Park, play park for children, named after a hunger striker, and actually supported, I have to say, by the SDLP, which was very galling at the time, and still would be. So I'd be against naming any public place in that way of glorifying any sort of a terror. It's wrong, but I think it shows that the mindset of republicanism, in that they want to share power and they want to be these peacemakers, they want to move forward, they want to convince unions for United Ireland, but still they'll put the very names of the people who murdered unions, who murdered innocent victims, in play parks, in their constituency offices. Could you imagine if unions, loyalists decided to do that, paramilitaries, and the DUP named some offers after a particularly high-profile loyalist terrorist or something like that? And to be honest, what I find, I don't think loyalists, paramilitary groups would want that anyway, because I've heard them say several times that abject remorse for what they did, and they don't want to glorify it. Now, in their eyes, what they did was justified, but equally, I don't think they're rubbing anybody's nose in it, and I think this is what Republicans are doing that now. Equally, everybody's the right to remember their dead. If the family those people want to remember them and say what they were in their gravestone, or even a memorial within a graveyard, but whatever. I didn't like what they did. I detest what they did, but everybody's right to be remembered privately, or even in a certain public way, but discreetly, so as it's not rubbing people's nose on it. We've had cases, but of other issues where there's been memorial plaques went up within sight almost the house where the people that murdered. That's just blatantly wrong, and it shouldn't happen. There's no excuse for it, but it's also part of the measurement, really, of how Republicans still see unionism and would treat it.
Yeah. Mervyn, you're in the Orange Order obviously a long time. Where did that journey begin for you? Tell us a wee bit about that.
Wow. Too long. I heard you saying earlier on that experience. That was a way of saying I was old. And sadly, I'm feeling it these days. My first genuine earliest memory of childhood is in 1962. I was 4 years of age. My mother and father were both in the order, and my grandfathers, etc., and they were all taking part in the Covenant Parade. And my auntie, who wasn't in the institution at that time, since joined, she took me to watch the parade. And I remember that watching the parade. I then remember going out to country, cousins in the country, stayed with them, and home late that night in the bus because nobody had cars. So my earliest memories of that. I then remember carrying the strings as a junior from about the age of 5. And actually, it's interesting. My life has evolved quite a lot around politics and unionist cause, because I was a message boy for Ernie Bird, the chemist, who was a prominent unionist. And the first role with him, when it was about, not the first role, but an early role with him, the Vanguard headquarters was just in one of his old chemist shops. And my job was half-time working for the chemist after school and half-time working for Vanguard in their office with the likes of Austin Ardle and Gene Coulter from Sandy Road, great unionists in their day. I remember the Ormeau Park rally, because having to carry all the stickers up to it, working towards it. And so I've always been entwined with, shall we say, unionist politics, and also the order. I obviously didn't play as key a role in the institution, or active a role during the Troubles, because I was caught up in dealing with that through joining the police. Well, but before I joined, I was active in the juniors and senior movement right up to I was 18. And then when I came out of the police, I continued to play an active role and got re-involved heavily within the institution. So the institution is very much part of my life. My grandfather was a Donegal Marines man. My other grandfather was in the 36 Ulster Division Lodge here in Belfast. So it's in my genes, I have to say. The order's in my genes. It's very much part of my fabric. And as people say sometimes, oh, you joined it just because your father was in it. Yes, you did. But actually, it comes a time you take a conscious decision, do you want to stay in it? And the values the order has are the values I still share. And that's why I remain a member and an active member of the institution.
Yeah. So it was 1962. Where did you grow up? Which part of Belfast did you grow up? Or was it Belfast? And the next part that goes on from that is, didn't they say in 1962, this comes from my parents, I was born in 1968. But my parents used to tell me that, their Catholic neighbours used to come out and watch the marching band and Loyal Order parades. Is that right, Mervyn?
Absolutely. I was born in East Belfast, just at the bottom of the Ravenhill Road. And our next door, well, interestingly, when I was born and growing up, the first neighbour next door was called Ovens, and his brother had been a sergeant in the police, which blew up in the 56-62 border campaign. So I knew Mr. Ovens and knew his brother had been murdered by the IRA. And then the next family that moved in, a Roman Catholic family, and very friendly family. The young lads collected for the 11th bonfire with us, and I got quite upset they couldn't carry the strings on the 12th day, but they were out watching the parade. And yes, there were people lived in the area, families you'd regard it maybe as Republican, because they'd been out in the 66 Rising celebrations, etc. But overall, the vast majority of Roman Catholic Protestants got on. Sadly, the divide of the Trouble changed that, and changed people coming out to watch the 12th, although I still know Roman Catholics who did over the years and seen them. Part of the institution, certainly in Belfast, I know in many other parts of the country, is to get everybody to come back and enjoy the parade again. But because the way it's been demonised, particularly by Republicans over the years, that's not possible for some Roman Catholics to do that. But there are increasing numbers, I believe, coming out to see the parades again and see them for what they are, parades and spectacles of colour and music and everything else. Yes, they will say there's overtones to them and they're celebrating this and that. but actually people come out to watch them because they're parades in many instances, to have a good day out. Sometimes I feel narcissists think it's all about them the 12th day, where it's not. It's all about us having a good day out, the same as they do on St. Patrick's Day. But no, there was a time when, growing up, another point I sometimes share is all the grocery stores, which for me growing up were sweet shops, were owned by Roman Catholics. All the pubs, which I didn't frequent but I knew were in the area, were owned by Roman Catholics. I lived 2 streets away from a Roman Catholic school, but there would only been maybe half a dozen Roman Catholics in the area, so kids had to be bused into the school. So I thought that Roman Catholics had it all sussed out. They owned all the sweet shops. They got a bus to school. I had to walk to school. It looked the other way around. I was from a working class house where everybody else outside toilet, but I thought it was the Roman Catholics had it all good at the beginning. Obviously, it wasn't working class across the board. Had a rough time at that time, but that was just life, and people go on with it.
Yeah. I just noticed there that there was a little message, or there was a little question, I guess, on the screen. I'll just pop it up on the screen. Right. I mean, this could be seen as somewhat controversial, Mervyn. So I'm going to ask you a question on this. It says that ask Mervyn really is if it's wrong, then the GAA being embraced in East Belfast. I think he's referring to the recent GAA introduction into East Belfast. And look, again, let me sort of define what it is that I think that most people have been saying to me is that, the GAA, I mean, they glorify terrorism in many more ways than one. I mean, they name their trophies, their games, their cups, even their teams are named after terrorists. And, I mean, I believe, Mervyn, whenever you're reaching out to someone, and I spoke about it earlier on, is that, I've done a lot of work of reaching out across the south and Southern Ireland to different people. But, I believe that when you're doing that, there are lines that you cannot cross whenever you're trying to sort of form a mutual understanding with somebody. For example, if, it's not much point in sort of changing who you are in order to try to accommodate someone. You try to tell people, you try to promote the what it is that you do, and you try to tell people, well, look, we mean you no harm. And in other words, my unionism doesn't mean anybody any harm. But I see this GAA, and people have said to me, I see them as they're glorifying terrorism. So the question is, I guess, I mean, is it right for, say, for example, Linda Irvine to have taken up is it a chairman or something of the GAA in East Belfast?
I think that's a matter for Linda Irvine. I'll give you my view of the GAA generally. What particularly annoys me about it is that it is put forward as a solely sporting organisation. It's not clearly a solely sporting organisation. It's a nationalist political organisation who want to see United Ireland, who are possible play the soldier song at the end of their matches, and everything's geared around the United Ireland. Remember, a new ball was produced for GAA a couple of years back, and they were bragging because there was 32 panels in the new ball. So they see everything from the perspective of United Ireland. So it's not solely a sporting organisation. And there's parts of the country, particularly Swatra and other areas, where it's very closely aligned with the IRA. When an IRA volunteer is buried, they're buried in their GAA or the GAA shirt on top of the coffin, flanked by GAA. And look, I'm not saying every member of the GAA is a card-carrying Republican or IRA supporter. I have met some GAA officials at various functions and panels have been taken part in, and they're aghast that I even think like that or have those views, because in those particular areas, that's not their experience of the GAA. They're neither Republican supporting or anything else, and they're very much into the cultural side of things. But sadly, the vast majority don't seem to lean towards that particular direction. And you have those parts of the GAA which name their names after terrorists in the past. Now, I think there were some moves to change that, but I don't think that they got it changed. I don't think any organisation who banned members of Her Majesty's Forces from the RUC up till about 10, 12 years ago I'd still be suspect of that organisation, because that was a clear indication where they stood. Their antecedents grew out of strength in the Irish Republican movement in many ways. The whole cultural side of thing, it was to keep people fit so as they could join. Part of the reason was let's join in these clubs as undercover units, shall we say, for republicanism or Fenians or whatever at the time was the game, and let's keep people fit in their training in many ways now. So we have to look at it as a whole. GAA as a sport, doesn't bother me at all. If people like to watch it, it's great. Watch a couple of games, not my cup of tea. But if people watch it and get on with it, that's grand. But they can't claim to be all innocent all of a sudden with their rhetoric and with everything else around them. And I think that's why it's difficulty people have accepting the GA in East Belfast. I don't think it's acceptable in many unionist areas because of its past, etc. And that needs to be looked at. It needs to be addressed by the GA. And we need to listen to those in the GA who say that's not what they're about. Then let's prove that's not what they're about. But equally, if that's what they want, that's what they want. That's who they are. So let them claim who they are, that they're a nationalist organisation. They're an organisation that say, oh yes, Protestants can join. But can you join really if you're a unionist? I suspect you can because you don't have to sign the dotted line. But for me, would any self-respecting unionist want to join the GA? I couldn't see why. But again, it's a personal choice.
Yeah. I mean, that was just something that people had been expressing to me, over the time. So, Mervyn, it's the year of our centenary, and that's coming up very, very shortly. I think the activities begin very, very shortly. So, I mean, would you just like to tell me a wee bit about, I mean, are you on the centenary committee or whatever it is that is setting all this up?
I'm on the Northern Ireland Advisory Forum, I have to say,
Okay.
which is more a forum than an advisory body. But I was put that by the NIO invited me to go on representing the institution. But generally, I'll come back to that if I may. Let me say this: Centennial has already started. For me, it started on the 1st of January. For some, it started with the Government of Ireland Act. I think mid-December, 22nd, 23rd, something like that. It started with it. But to me, we've already had several celebratory events, shall we say. We heralded in the new year with a fanfare from Schomburg Household by Zoom and online because of the current situation. We partnered with Newgate Arts up in Londonderry. The place, remember, the council refused them any funding, but the first event on the 1st of January happened in Londonderry and Brownlow House, and we had a 10-minute video with lambeg drums and dancers, etc., commemorating that. And Sunday, yesterday, no later than yesterday, we had our first centennial service of the year, an excellent sermon given by Reverend Alistair Smith, the Grand Chaplain of the Grand Orange Lodge of Ireland, and Ron Johnson, Reverend Ron Johnson, the Free Presbyterian Church, was involved in that. You can get it online and see. It was a great sermon about the open our years on Thanksgiving. So to me, it started. And I think that no matter what we do as unionists this year, it should be looked through the prism of 100-year centenary. And that's what the institution will be seeking to do. At a Grand Lodge level, we had organised two events, and I've organised two main events, shall we say. One would have been and is still at this minute, a major parade in the centre of Belfast from Stormont. And we had that lined up, and ongoing preparations are being made. However, we have to be realistic and depend what the COVID advice is at the time and the regulations, whether that goes ahead. But at the minute, that's proceeding. We have another event later in the year at the Ulster Folk Park at Cultraw, like a picnic, where we'll be reenacting the things that happened 100 years ago, skills, etc. But in between, we're organising sporting events, five-a-side competitions, golf competitions, etc. But equally, we want every county, district and lodge to be doing something. It's not just about what we do at a Grand Lodge level. We want every person, every community, every band, every organisation to be commemorating this year, and not just on one day. We have an exhibition which is ready to be, which could have been opened on the 1st of January for people to come in and view, and it tells the history of all of Northern Ireland, all aspects of it, but it particularly highlights where Orangemen have been involved in that history because we played. But I see this as a vital year for Northern Ireland. I see it as one we want to celebrate. Now, there are issues around that word. Some people want to mark it and not celebrate. Some people want to commemorate it and not celebrate it. Personally, I don't mind what they use. Personally, everything I do will be probably about celebration, with the exception of any memorial events I'm involved in, because we have an Orange Victims Day every year on the 1st of September when we highlight those 339 brethren and one sister who were murdered during the Troubles. But I don't want to look back at who was killed in 1921, who's been killed since then, Troubles, and highlight those Orange personnel. I think we look at how we commemorate the British soldiers, our soldiers who were killed in the War of Independence, who have been forgotten about. How will they be commemorated this year? A government committee was set up pretty late, and they'll admit that. I could blame COVID on that, but COVID wasn't totally to blame. I think there was a lack of will to move earlier, but we got them to move at some stage, and it meets. But I don't rely on it to celebrate the history of Northern Ireland. I'm relying on the communities of Northern Ireland, the unionist communities, to celebrate the history of Northern Ireland. And again, getting back to your point about bringing in, I want the new communities to celebrate. I want the Indian community, the Chinese community to celebrate their place in Northern Ireland, because they've contributed to the economy here. They've contributed to everything else, So I want anyone who feels part of Northern Ireland to be involved in the celebrations. And there's no thing, this is the right celebration or that's the wrong celebration. People celebrate it in the way that they want to. Of course, there'll be those who don't want to get involved. And why would they want to get involved? Because they've always fought against Northern Ireland. They want to destroy Northern Ireland. So, they may have something, they may have conferences about, did partition work and the failure of the Orange State. They'll have those things anyway. They've been saying that for years. But we need to be having conferences and debates and talks about what was good about Northern Ireland, what we contribute to the United Kingdom. And also then it can be used to strengthen those links with the United Kingdom. It can be used as a springboard into the next 100 years of Northern Ireland. And I just want to get people excited about it and to be doing something about it. And no matter what that is, I know the Shared History Fund come out, it's now closed. The Northern Ireland office put aside £1 million to celebrate. Now, some of that will be what we wanted to do, hopefully. But a lot of it will be about what academia wanted to do, which isn't always the same as how we want to celebrate on the ground. Nationalists were entitled to apply for that. People from across the United Kingdom will apply to maybe strengthen the union. Equally, I've already mentioned some councils have refused money. So what I'm saying is I don't think there's a lot of money about to celebrate the centennial of Northern Ireland, but we don't need money. We never did. Sometimes we rely on money too much. We need to get back to raising our own resources to celebrate the centennial of Northern Ireland, which we call it, and the institution, as a celebration of what happened here over 100 years, of what we did contribute to the United Kingdom, how our military forces contributed to it, how people invented the ejector seat, the heart defibrillator, all those things, all the good things that happened here. Yes, we will commemorate those who sadly died defending that border, defending the integrity of the United Kingdom. But equally, the vast majority should be about street parties. I have my flag out, the centennial flag, from the 1st of January. A lot of orange halls are flying the centennial flag. And I think people are becoming enthused about it. But I think the one thing I want to make out, this isn't a one-day wonder celebrating the centennial. It's all year. The 12th, and pray God it will go ahead this year, but we would want to theme it around the centennial. So no matter what your organisation is planning, John, or no matter what others, I want to give them a challenge. Look at everything through the eyes of 100 years of Northern Ireland and make sure we incorporate that into it.
Yeah. Mervyn, I mean, you were in the RUC, and, I'm going to ask you here about what's happening with the persecution and the prosecution of the veterans. And, I mean, have you any thoughts on that? Whilst I would say that terrorists have immunity from prosecution, and I would say that, make no mistake, they have immunity from prosecution, because you often see that they're accused of something, they're rearrested, and then they're let back out again, and that's just the way that it works. I mean, have you any views on that? I mean, what's your views on what's happening right now along those lines?
I think there's a danger of being a two-tier system of justice. In that, I've already talked about all the inquiries that's been called for and all the commissions they want to deal with things and look into things. But it's all a one-way traffic, I have to say. You see things like Soldier F. I would support Soldier A to say it, never mind Soldier F, in that they shouldn't be hounded in the way they are. Now, equally, let me say quite categorically, if a policeman or a soldier went out and murdered someone deliberately and decided just to take their life for the sake of it, what he called, they should be prosecuted to the hilt. No sympathy with that whatsoever. But if someone was out serving their country and doing their best, and maybe even made an honest mistake, and mistakes were made, it was a terrible time, they should not be facing prosecution or being hounded. I think that needs to stop for everybody. It's not that anybody's anything to hide. I'm a very proud member of the RUC, proud of everything I achieved and done within the RUC, and proud of all my colleagues, no matter what their backgrounds were, I serve with. But there shouldn't be this consistent hounding of ex-members of security force. But you will get that for a very simple reason. in the sense that the security forces and the government kept records. Terrorists don't keep records. And secondly, they thought all this through when they were coming to the peace negotiations. They got all their weapons destroyed, or those they handed in destroyed, so there was no forensic evidence. So it's not a case of a rifle being found now and you get DNA on it, because if those rifles have been, we've done them a favour in many ways, we've destroyed those weapons. They themselves blew up the forensic lab at Beaver. That was a deliberate act to destroy evidence just before the ceasefires came about. That massive bomb, which miraculously didn't kill anybody, but it destroyed a lot of evidence. So there's a lot of evidence isn't there anymore to convict terrorists. There's not the same information available because terrorists, particularly Republican terrorists, I see, are shaping the history that they were the heroes and everybody else was at fault. You know, what they call the police, the army, they manipulated everything, murdered everybody, and even their sort of the narrative almost is we set all the bombs off and the bad ones that killed civilians were ours, to discredit them, which is absolute nonsense. So I think there needs to be a balance in that. And I'm not looking at amnesty here, because I did nothing wrong for an amnesty, but I am looking at balance on how things are approached. And I say again, if someone committed murder, they deserve to face the full rigors of the law. But in the vast majority of cases of those I see come to court, that's not the case in my mind. But on the Republican side, every murder they committed was a murder and a crime in that sense. Yet no, there's not the same level of people going to court because the same evidence isn't there any longer, because they made sure they destroyed it. And so people getting that sense of justice is lessened on that side because of their Republican actions.
And just in a nutshell, I mean, do you reckon that there should be a line drawn onto the past if we've ever got to move forward successfully?
That's an interesting one. You can get, got myself into trouble with unionist victims groups, particularly one in the past. Didn't suggest that, but I sort of explained, my point of view was, like I just said, I don't think they're going to get justice, but you can't close that justice down to them. And I was saying maybe you should think about looking what their needs are, and I don't mean by money, because money's never going to replace an individual, but if there's health issues or support that they needed, to look at that. But that was seen as sort of saying selling out. So I'm very coy to say that, while I have certain sympathy with that view. Equally, I don't think we should close justice down for anyone, because somebody could get a conscience and walk into a police barracks and say, I did that murder. So it's important that what I call that person could still get justice. Sadly, I think very few people will get justice in this land for what the terrorism, particularly Republicans, fentanyl.
Yeah. Just popped up a question there from George Russell. So senior DUP MP Gavin Robinson and Peter Robinson will add to that. They warn unionism needs to prepare for a border poll. What's your thoughts on that, Mervyn?
No relation, let me add it to him. What he called, I have to say, I was particularly angry, I think, when Peter Robinson voiced this at first. And then I've thought about what he'd said and tried to analyse it and think it through, and I've seen what Gavin said today. And I think, personally, it was put in the wrong way. I think unions need to prepare itself to strengthen the union. And if we prepare to strengthen the union, then we'll be ready for anything down the road, whether it's a border poll or whatever it is. And we need to make sure that we want people to support the union, to play an active role in the economic society and economic part of the union, want to play their role in voting. So if we get people brought into unionism, shall we say, and strengthen unionism, we'll be prepared for any poll down the road. Should not be the Belfast elections, because as I frequently say when I'm out trying to encourage people to come out and to vote, we're only defeated in Belfast because unionists don't vote. People will not come out and vote. If unionists come out and vote, and we had a strong campaign, and we've had strong campaigns in the past, but many still haven't come out. But if unionists voted, there wouldn't be an Alliance Sinn Féin controlled council in Belfast City Council. So I see the sentiment that we need to strengthen unionism without a doubt. And if we strengthen it, then we're prepared for any sort of poll, whether it's an electoral poll or whether it's a border poll. I don't think we should specifically prepare for a border poll solely. And I'm not sure if either Gavin or Peter, in hindsight, when I think about it, we're saying that, but they can speak for themselves. I believe we're saying we should prepare and strengthen unionism. And in that, then we prepared for a border poll. Because, yes, a border poll will come at some stage. I don't see it around the corner. I don't fear it, because if we do our job in convincing people that the unions, their best place to be, then I think we'll easily win any, not only border poll, but easily win elections and begin to win back control of certain parts of this country and take it from the Alliance Party and from those nationalists who shall we say, it's unknown to them at this present time.
Yeah. Mervyn, this might be one that's controversial, and goodness knows you may even have you may have subscribed to this, what I'm about to talk about yourself. I mean, I've seen for a while now that there's much talk of Irish passport holders here in Northern Ireland, and it's being used in a way that commentators on the other side are almost using that as a measure to say that well, there's more and more people that have Irish passports in Northern Ireland. I mean, I envisage a day personally where I would see that they'll use that measure to call for a border poll and probably call for it quite successfully. Have you any views on that?
I don't have an Irish passport. I don't envisage myself ever getting an Irish passport. I don't think it'd be one of the criteria for a border poll, I have to say. I think it's the government to decide what the criteria is. I think the bigger criteria would be the up and coming census. People putting down whether they're British or Irish or Northern Ireland or whatever. So I think we need to be very careful that we fill in that census form correctly. That would worry me more than anything else. But I have to say, I do sign Irish passports. I have members of my congregation, members of the local community would come and ask me. And people get Irish passport for a broad variety of reasons. It's usually they hedge their bets because they maybe property in Spain or something like that. They didn't know what was happening. It's easier to travel. I have to say, when a lot of security people were out in the Middle East, you had more chances of survival with an Irish passport, I have to say, if you were kidnapped. So people get Irish passport for some very good reasons. My more important thing would be that they're not getting it just to suddenly become nationalists and want it for that reason. That's where I think would be a difficulty for us. But getting back to that thing, that's where we need to convince them that the best place to be is stay within the United Kingdom. I know people have come and apologised for me to get them signed. I've been embarrassed when they asked me to sign their Irish passports. But I can understand people have sometimes reasons for getting them. So I certainly wouldn't view it as there's an increase in people want to be Irish. Because why would you want to buy into the state and the debt, and why would you want to buy into the cost of that particular state? So I think it would be a bad indicator to anybody that people are going towards United Ireland.
Yeah. Now, this is an area that I'm advising against, and I can see that you're on the same page as me, that we really shouldn't be playing into the talking up of a new Ireland. We should be promoting the benefits of the union and, showing people how it is that they're best placed within the union. However, whenever they're talking about this so-called new Ireland, they're talking about, that there's going to be no flag, perhaps there's going to be no national or national anthem that's going to be changed. They're talking about perhaps even Stormont would be kept, and I've heard that being floated on a few occasions. If it ever happened, do you think? Have you any thoughts on will they try to keep Stormont as a concept, as a place, as a parliament?
I think, John, it's even a dangerous concept discussing that, because we're getting into the realms of, I've said I will not take part in any of these New Ireland forums, new conversations, or anything else, because I don't want to be part of United Ireland. So I'm not going to discuss my place in something I don't want. I can understand why you're asking the question, but for me, if they made the South the national anthem of New Ireland, I wouldn't still want to be part of it. So I'm very worried about, I think we need to be worried about getting involved in those conversations and drawn into that debate, because that undermines your own people. There's so many people I've met recently, not so many, but shall we say, notable unionists in some cases have said to me, we're finished, we're sold out, maybe we should think about negotiating our place. I don't think that's what either Robinson, either Peter or Gavin were saying. I think they were saying prepare for a poll, and I think that's right, but prepare for any sort of poll, not just a border poll. So now there would be things I would be inclined to think about getting involved in the Shared Ireland dialogue, which I talked about a Shared Ireland. Well, the Shared Ireland, we live in the Shared Island. 2/3 was in the Republic and a third is in the United Kingdom. So I'm happy to how we can improve relationships. I think what you were referring to earlier on, how you can make common cause with people. So I'm happy to debate a Shared Island, providing it doesn't diminish my Britishness, providing it doesn't be a a smoke screen for leading us down the road to United Ireland. And there's people would say, and I've voiced this to a few people in the Republic, people say, well, it's all about big schemes, improving the infrastructure. That's to create a one-way so as we all go south. Well, actually, it could be great where we take a lot of business up here. we can trade better, but we need to be careful about it. But I'm happy to get involved in the debate about good neighbours and about good relations, but I'm not happy to second guess or believe how we would be treated in United Ireland, because I personally have no intentions of going to United Ireland, and I will every last fibre of my body, shall we say, will fight against that, and I mean politically, because I'm a Democrat, etc. I don't believe that we need to resort to terrorism to save it, but I think we can do that if we get together, if we show some cooperation, if we work out a reasonable strategy that most people can buy in, and stop this bickering, stop attacking each other. Everybody's a traitor because they said this or they done that. We need all unionists, and that includes those who are already unionists but are seen because they've said something, because they went to the wrong meeting, because they've engaged somebody or whatever, are all of a sudden written off. And I think that's one of the worst traits we have. I seen it in the flag protest, whereby initially everybody was a traitor who was watching Coronation Street and didn't come out and watch it. Then it was a traitor when they decided to do the white line. No, you should block the road. Then if you didn't come onto the road, you were a traitor. And it gradually got down to there was only one or two left, because everybody else was a traitor because they didn't do X, Y, and Z. But every one of those people, and every one of those people sitting in their houses, supported the flag remaining up. But how we went about achieving that was some different. So I think we have to be careful about the debates around United Ireland. I am interested in, however, and also looking at how the Protestant population in the South was treated after partition. Where did it disappear? I think 50,000 people disappeared now. I don't mean as happened, some of them they were murdered and put in holes, but people left the country, including my grandfather and my father, because they couldn't get work because they were discriminated against. I belong to the Grand Orange Lodge of Ireland, which is hundreds of members in the Republic of Ireland. We look after their interests as well. But they haven't had to keep their head down in many instances, and they haven't been treated. In fact, in cases, some of the newer communities were treated better than they were, and they were born and bred. But as I described the Taoiseach when I met him, there's a significant number of the Protestant population in the South who are Irish citizens, but they're culturally British. And there's been no protection of their rights, there's been no protection of their history, etc. And that is being addressed, I have to say, in some way. That was part of Fergal's visit up the Museum of Orange Heritage. We were addressing things like that and trying to build relationships to look after our membership in the Republic of Ireland. So I have no issue about those sorts of negotiation, or not conversations, shall we say, about sharing things and building better relations. But I do have a problem getting involved in anything that says, oh, you're placing it, we'll give you this, we'll do that for you, and this will be wonderful, and we'll keep that. It's not on for me.
I like that answer, and I think we're going to cut that, and we'll make a little video clip of it for the go out, Mervyn. And I would just say to you that I would just wish that our unionist politicians, they would come out and they would say the same language, because that would go a long way to addressing the concerns and the fears of many people that we talk to on a daily basis. So that was a perfect answer. Thank you very much. So on to the next part. Okay, so the centenary, it's coming up. Is there any special part of that centenary that you're looking forward to? Is there something that you have earmarked and you're saying that I just wait to see that happen?
I want to see all the things happen. I think people are innovative out there. We have said we're doing a big parade, we're doing a picnic. Those are great, but I think it will be the ideas I haven't heard yet. This is going to sound you. If the ladies are doing a tray baking competition, because tray bakes are particularly Northern Ireland thing, a tray bake sounds a daft thing, but it shows we want to celebrate every aspect of Northern Ireland, and that I'll be ridiculed for saying that, and I'll make fun of it, etc. But it's every aspect. Should it be baking? Should it be cooking? Should it be farming? Should it be industry? Should it be our culture? We need to be celebrating, and I'm looking forward to that idea, seeing on Facebook or social media. That's brilliant. I wish I'd have thought of that. I wish I was doing that. And those are the things I'm looking forward to. And seeing people buy into this and being proud and hold their head up, because we have went through a bit of a knocking over this last lot of years. We have got the head down a wee bit. We need to lift that head high and look up and look forward. And part of the centennial, I think, is doing that, is getting people back to that place where they're proud to be from Northern Ireland, proud to be part of the United Kingdom and want to play their full role. And there are things that the government have set up a few things to promote the United Kingdom. While I despise what the government have done on this occasion, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're still part of the United Kingdom. We should look at what they're doing there. We should look at any way we can play our roles in there, particularly when it comes to Scotland, the Grand Lodge of Scotland, indeed the Grand Lodge of England. Is there a role they can play in those things? Because sometimes we can get too bound up in Northern Ireland. We're part of a big unit, and that's the United Kingdom, and we need to play our full and active role, as we have done for 100 years. We need that to continue, and we need to make people, we need to encourage people in the mainland to be proud of their British heritage, and sadly that's been lacking. It happened during probably the anniversaries of World War One. There was a lot of that, and even amongst the Muslim and the Sikh communities, the role they played in World War One, and they were proud to be British. I think that needs to be, shall we say, built upon, and see that all sections of the United Kingdom are proud to be members of the United Kingdom and want to move forward on that basis.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at some of the comments there, Mervyn. You read from yourself. Have to say, I've enjoyed the straight talking and the answers from Mervyn. Very refreshing. Wouldn't it be good if our political leaders could do the same? No spin, just honest answers. And I think that that's what we need within unionism right now. And I think that what you've done tonight is that, again, we're going to come out of the back of this here. And I think a lot of people will be refreshed by some of the answers that you've given. Mervyn,
just quickly on that. I've been to many conferences over the years, including Christian conferences and talks, and they're all good at the time. But we all go home and forget about it. We all, and I think it's imperative that everybody on tonight or wherever thinks about, what can I do to celebrate the centennial of Northern Ireland? What can I do to promote Northern Ireland in the coming years? So everybody needs to think. It's not just about looking at someone else and saying, oh, they're doing a good job, and I'm saying others are doing a good job, I'm looking forward to this. But everybody has a part to play in this and something to do. And it's a matter of thinking of what that is and then going ahead and doing it. Sorry, John, I interrupted you.
No, you're okay, Mervyn. Mervyn, we call this platform Restore. Restore unionist politics back to the place where it should be in Northern Ireland. Restore the right of the unionist people not to be second-class citizens in their own land. To have the same democracy as people right across the United Kingdom. If there was anything that you wanted to restore today in January 2021, what is it that you would try to restore?
Be a long list, but let me pick one. Restore respect. Respect. Yeah. I can disagree with many people, but I can still respect them. But sadly today in this, and maybe it's an age thing, social media, but sometimes there's no respect for your point of view. I can differ with someone on how I achieve things, but hopefully I respect them in the end. And out of that, then our bond towards union will be stronger. But if we get to the stage where we despise everybody and reject everything they say, and they're useless and they're this and that, it gets none of us anywhere. And that's not to say if people totally do the wrong thing, it shouldn't be dealt with as such. But equally, the vast majority of what I see when people disrespect each other, it's not that. They've said something that they don't agree with. So I think we need to restore respect, and that's respect for ourselves, respect for each other, respect for our country. Get back to respect the Northern Ireland and its role it's played within the United Kingdom, and respect the United Kingdom, because we don't want to become little Northern Irelanders. Because to be honest, an independent Northern Ireland is repugnant to me as a republic is, because I'm British and remain within the United Kingdom. So that you could say restore unionism, restore all sorts of things in there. But to me, restore respect will go a long way to helping us get on and building bridges and relationships with each other. And then the ones you talked about with others who have common cause with it outside unionism, and see where we go from there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been guilty in the past of doing exactly what you say, being annoyed and accusing other unionists of doing whatever. But here we find ourselves in 2021 in a place where if we don't come together, we're finished. And that's the truth. So we need to come together. It's not an option. And on the basis of that, Mervyn, I mean, I would just basically, again, I know that the DUP and some of the members of the DUP who have been really courteous to me in the past and invited me to meetings and literally let it out bare, I would ask those people, isn't it time that maybe that some of those people come on the screen, just like yourself, just like even Billy Hodgson a few weeks ago, and other people, even John Tongue last week, and we're getting the answers that we need, and them answers are being relayed to the people on the live chat. And I think that, you know, we've no other way of doing this right now other than through platforms like this, because how do you, I mean, we can't get out, we can't run meetings around the country or whatever. And, you know, for that reason, I think that these type of platforms are gold for doing this type of thing. So here's a request to, you know, Arlene Foster, Jeffrey Donaldson, you know, whoever, anybody from the DUP, the UUP, if you want to come on, we can ask the questions. And, you know, it's a relaxed sort of an atmosphere. I mean, nobody's here to put you behind an 8-ball or anything else. Okay, there might be some questions that might be a bit uncomfortable, but I mean, that's the way to, if you can't ask the questions, well, then how do we resolve things? Mervyn, I would like to thank you. We're sort of coming to the end of the show, but I would like to pop something up here, and we'll have a little chat about this. I have started an outreach to a man called Kenny Donaldson. That's a guy that runs, he's one of the members of SEF up in Fermanagh, and they're a victims group. And, you know, Kenny, in the past, he's been kind enough to get us some guests. Aileen Quinton was one of the guests, and her mother was, she was a victim in the Enniskillen bomb. We've done a powerful interview with Aileen at the anniversary of the Enniskillen bomb just last year there. And, you know, we're going to take the platform down the line of literally talking to the victims, listening to their concerns, listening to what, from a victim standpoint, what it is that politicians need to be doing in order to address some of the problems that the victims are having. You know, and as I said to you earlier, Mervyn, and I've said this on the stream previously, is that, you know, I want to be able to reach out even into the Dáil or the Dáil, whatever way that's pronounced. I'm talking about the Irish Parliament. I want to be talking to people down there, and I want to be, you know, posing the hard questions in terms of, I mean, if you know, if we're going to live in this land, if we're going to live, and this is going to be a shared sort of a thing, you know, I again, I have to clarify, I'm a British Unionist and always will remain that way. And that'll be, I'm that way until I die. That's the truth of the matter. But we still do have to have these conversations that, you know, if we are going to share things, you know, is there anything that they can do in order to try to curtail people from agitating against, say, victims? Because I personally feel that it's vile to add insult to the injury that these people have already had. And one of the people, now, I announced on Saturday night that we're going to be having a man coming on our screen. Well, I didn't actually say who it was, but it says that we're going to be announcing in the near future probably something for most people that they'll think, well, you know, I don't know, there might be mixed thoughts. So let's pop up a little advertisement just on the screen, and I'll talk about it for a moment. This is next Sunday afternoon at 2:30. We have a man, David Kelly, coming on. And David Kelly's dad, he was a member of the Irish Army, the legitimate Irish Army, and he was murdered by the IRA along with a guard. And it was, I think it was Athlone in and around that area that it happened. I have to go and do some research on it. But I mean, I would ask anyone that's watching the screen this evening to come along on Sunday and to listen to David's story, because it's the same thing. I mean, building bridges is about reaching across the border and talking to people with like minds, talking to people that I mean, I'm told just last year by a man called Kieran Quigley. He's the professor of the Gaelic language down there. And he tells me that, you know, most people that he knows down there have more in common with unionists than they do with their own government and any of the political parties in the south. So there's a huge opportunity for us straight off, is to reach out into the south and to, you know, make friends with the people in the south. In the event of a border poll ever coming around, well, who knows, maybe we can persuade those people to vote against it for us. And that's what politics is. I mean, there's nothing, you know, there's no dodgy business in trying to do that. I mean, that's what we need to do. We need to get out and we need to try to persuade people to stand with us and stand on our side. So I'm looking forward to David Kelly coming along. And then next Tuesday evening, we have Kenny Donaldson and three members of SEF who are victims, one from England and another two here from Northern Ireland. So again, that'll be a good show. What we're going to do is we're going to highlight the plight of these victims, and and we're going to listen to them and understand that, I mean, previously whenever I've talked to victims, and it's always the case that they feel, they feel hard done by. They feel very, very let down by the system, the way that the system is dealing with the terrorists. And and as far as victims, I mean, it's just the wrong way around, Mervyn, isn't it? It's totally the way around. It should be victim centered, and then everything else thereafter follows. I mean, have you any thoughts on that, Mervyn?
Yeah, no, I think it's important we hear from the victims. I have to say, as I say, nearly in the past, people accused me of sort of not saying the victim, but I think their story needs to be told, needs to be heard. I think things like the recent Jim Ruddy initiative, I have to say, was very badly handled by excluding innocent victims from it and not being part of it, not having them centre stage. I think Kenny does a good job, I have to say, in the whole victims world, and we would certainly talk to them within the institution and others, and there's United Victims as well, the group there. So I think it's important that we listen, but not only listen, but see what we can do to support them, because I see the chances of getting justice very slim. So how else can we support those sectors and keep the forefront of our mind? And while I said, yes, everybody's a victim and we need to remember it all, it's sometimes only by remembering the major incidents or particular highlighted ones that we will sort of hear about the other ones as well. But I know Kenny tries to keep them all and does keep them all at the forefront of everybody's mind. So I think it's important. It's good to hear you're putting on programs like that. And let me say also is what's pleasing about it is I found this very respectful. I go on, shall we say, the BBC shows, and they're certainly nowhere near as respectful as this has been. And I think that should be an encouragement to come on. I can understand some. I've been in meetings where, to be honest, no political person should have been because they were bear pits, and they were just treated horrendously. I can think of one particular famous one in East Belfast, and they shouldn't have happened in that way because there was no respect shown. But I've been shown the utmost courtesy here tonight, as I know all your guests have been since you began, saying it's important that the unionist politicians and all people from the unionist community who feel they have something to say come on and use this programme as a platform to share that with everybody, I have to say.
Mervyn, I take my hat off to you and thank you very much for coming on, and again, greatest respect to the answers that you've given. And we'll get straight on to it, and we'll be cutting this video up and we'll be popping out some little sound bites, because I have to say they're very positive sound bites, and again, you'll see that by what the people on the screen has been saying. So look, what's it all about for 2021 for us? And I'm sure you'll agree, Mervyn, it's about winning the hearts and minds, not just the hearts and minds within our own community, because we need to do a lot of work there, and we need to bring people to the point whereby that they're confident and they will get out and they will vote. And we do need to have the open and honest debates and discussions with our politicians, because if by not having these debates, and I'm talking about the DUP and even the UUP and everybody else, by not having the debates, what's happening is that, how are we ever meant to mend things or show our concerns if we can't talk about it? So talking is a good thing. Mervyn,
and this year, with the opportunity of Centennial to do it all in the context of Centennial.
Absolutely. So Mervyn, I would just like for you to address the live chat there and just really, over to you. Just tell them who Mervyn Gibson is, whatever it is that you have to say. Go ahead.
Mervyn Gibson, who's been a unionist all his life, probably at the I'm going to say not the end of my life, but shall we say older. Certainly no wiser, but I think I've seen and learned things and changed my mind, and people shouldn't be afraid to do that. I remember arguing with my father, who wasn't a big political man, but he believed in leadership and he supported Brian Faulkner and the Unionist Party of Northern Ireland. I thought he was a traitor, and more or less told him many's the night over the tea table when we're watching television. But we've learned now there's room for all unionists. There's room for any shade of unionism, and we need to respect and get talking to each other, and then we can together promote the union. We'll have differences, we'll disagree on certain things. That's life, never mind politics. But the important thing is we want to promote Northern Ireland within the United Kingdom, and we want to promote the benefits of the United Kingdom to everybody in this country, and share a common cause with those who want to share a common cause with us.
Yeah. Mervyn, thank you very much for coming on. And Mervyn, if you stay where you are, at this point in the show, what we do is we just play ourselves out with our what we call our theme tune. And our theme tune is called Hands Across the Water. And that's something that's very important. We need to keep our hands reached out across the water. And we do a show on a Wednesday evening, and that's for the people, the newcomers to the stream, because the numbers has been quite good. But we do a show on a Wednesday evening, which goes out, and we call it Restore GBNI. And we have English and Welsh and Scottish guests who come on regularly and talk about the benefits of staying together, sticking together, and helping each other in a way that is mutually beneficial to everyone. So, Mervyn, thanks very much. Thanks to the live chat. And I'm just going to play us out here with our theme tune, Hands Across the Water. Thank you.
Cheers.
Just across the Irish Sea stirs a heart of loyalty, raising honor and indignity, drives a will to keep us British free. Not alone are we on this journey, for in a land just across the sea is a hand that reaches out in friendship, and a bond that's lasted centuries. As hands cross the water, reaching out for you and me, for Queen Ulster and for Scotland, help to keep our loyal people free. Let the cry be no surrender, let no one doubt our loyalty, reaching out to the brave red hand of Ulster is the hand across the sea. Help to keep our loyal people free. Let the cry be no surrender, let no one doubt our loyalty, reaching out to the brave red hand of Ulster is a hand across the sea. Just across the Irish Sea stirs a heart of loyalty, raising honor and dignity, drive the will to keep us British free. Not alone, we on this journey, for in a land just across the sea is a hand that reaches out in friendship, is the hand across the sea, is the hand across the sea, is the hand across the sea.
We didn't join Europe to be swallowed up in some bureaucratic conglomerate where it's Euro this and Euro that and forget about being British. We're British and we're proud of it. proud of our traditions, proud of our national character,